Hey folks, and welcome to the Backstage Community Sessions. It's already February 16, which means that it is time for our adopter session today. While folks are trickling in, I wanted to say welcome. So this is a really special edition. This is a year of many celebrations, like predicted. We exactly have our first year anniversary of the community sessions. And it is really good and really fun to see you all showing up here and contributing to this session. This session is not created to brag about the project, though we love doing that, of course, all showing off our hard work. It is to see the faces behind the pull requests and to connect with each other, make this project less anonymous, but have this time to hang out together, share experiences, show off new work which is being done, and have discussions with the many questions you ask each time in the issues, and we love that. So thank you so much for making this a fun meetup. At least for me, it's one of the highlights of the month. So thank you. We have prepared a little video to celebrate today. Is of course just a really short summary, and we were not able to include all the faces joining our community sessions, but it gives a general idea of all the fun we had and all the contributions by many of you. So once again, thank you very much, and we hope you keep on showing up and tell your friends about this meetup. Okay, so what's in store for today? We, of course, have the maintainer update. We have Himanshu once again returning for a demo, this time with the homepage plugin. Fredrik will give a demo of the entity inspection dialog, which has been worked on. And of course, we have generous time to address some of the questions you asked in the issues. But first, the maintainer update.
No, so I can give an update. I think we gave an update somewhere around just before the end of last year that we were working hard on stabilizing core APIs, kind of shipping out a lot of deprecations in the core packages and so on. We are now doing the same for the catalog and the scaffolder plugins. So expect to see a lot of changes for the catalog and scaffolder in the upcoming couple of releases, and then a nicer period of more stability after that.
Awesome. So thank you. I take it if folks have questions, they will throw them in the chat and we'll get to them later. Next up is Himanshu, because there was some blog post recently about the homepage plugin, and Himanshu wanted to show some things.
Absolutely, because I love doing live demos and seeing my code fail and then getting nervous. I hope that doesn't happen today. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we created a new, let me share my screen and then just show you things as well. I'm going to share the full desktop too. All right, and then you all disappeared. That's great, Zoom. Awesome. So we created a new blog post. Great work on that, Emma and Kat, about introducing Backstage homepage templates. Here it is. and I'll ask Suzanne to keep admitting people as it. Thanks.
Don't worry. Just
yeah,
focus on the presentation.
Cool. Yeah, so homepage. I have created a new Backstage app. And let me show you the dreaded terminal. Let me make sure the font is all right so that you can see things. But I just created a new live demo project by running create app. And then when I open it, and I'll need another browser window. This is how it looks. Yeah, so you can see a bunch of entities, sample entities, of course, in the catalog. And that's basically the homepage that you get from Create App. Now, I would like you to use the chat feature in Zoom and tell me if your homepage is still this. Are you still using the catalog homepage, or did you manage to get to somewhere else? Is it something custom? Or is it still catalog? Because that would just, give me more motivation to do this. So I'm going to let you put stuff in chat asynchronously. But for now, I'm going to follow a very short tutorial, I hope, which is inside getting started, Backstage homepage, setup and customization. And at the end, we'll have a different homepage, hoping it'd be really great, something that you would want to try out after this session, which is different from catalog homepage. Let me increase the font so that you can read stuff. So now I'm going to read all of this. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say things. So the first step is to install the plugin home package. So this is and I'm going to start doing it on the side. This is a front-end plugin, which has a bunch of important components for setting up the homepage. So I'm going to do that in the front end, front end part of the Backstage app. As you can see, I like to run the front end and back end separately. Of course, you can always do yarn dev, which concurrently runs both front end and back end together. I like to keep things separate because I haven't changed anything in the back end right now, and I don't want that to restart. People have preferences and opinions. I hope I didn't start a thread. No, so the plugin is being installed right now. And then after that being done, we're going to create a very basic homepage here. And then we're going to have that as our homepage and not this catalog redirection. So let me dive into code. All right, the plugin is created. I'm going to do yarn start. Oops. All right, VS Code. There you go. So now to identify why the homepage is catalog, if you go to the app file inside packages app, you can see this sneaky bit of code which says navigate request to the route to catalog. And that's why it happens. Whenever I open Backstage, it just takes me to the catalog. I'm going to delete this. As it says in the tutorial, just delete this line and replace it with a new custom homepage component. Sorry, things are moving around a bit as the front end started, but I'm going to replace this navigation with a custom component called a homepage, which I'm going to create in a second. And it's going to just say welcome to Backstage because I love CSS. No, we're not going to do any CSS right now, but let's create this file. Inside packages app, source components, a new homepage file. If you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we can go through that later. So I'm going to create a new folder for all the things homepage. I'm going to call this homepage.tsx. There has been a debate lately about should it be like this? Should it be like this? Or yeah, let's see. No one gets mad. And my homepage component is ready. and I'm going to use it. How do I hide Zoom? Not sure. All right, so I'm going to import it somewhere. Import the new component I created from components, homepage. This is imported now, and I'm going to use it. And I'm going to refer back to the tutorial. Going to copy this. Oh yeah, these were the things that I needed to import. Why don't I do that? And remove these plus icons. Oh, this is frustrating, right? Like you want to have a nice diff of things that you want to add, but when you copy it, you get all those plus signs, which are pretty much useless. I think GitHub has started having a better copy flow so that you don't get these plus signs when you copy something from a diff. All right, to sum it up, what we have done right now is remove the navigation, which takes you from home to catalog with something custom that you have created. And if I open home again, which I can do by opening the front page, this is it. This is your brand new homepage. Who wouldn't like this to be the homepage of Backstage, right? Like you get so many useful information right out of the box. No, I'm kidding. This is terrible. But just to give you an idea that when you can have any custom component over here. Something that we need to change is when we click this home thing in the sidebar, it still takes to the catalog. So we can change this to take us to the home page and maybe add a new catalog sidebar item. So back to the tutorial. This is where we want to get at. So it says change something in the root.tsx file, which is where the sidebar item lives. Let's find it out. So if I go to root.tsx, I can see this is it. Sidebar item, icon home, but takes me to catalog. So why don't we just replace this with home? And then maybe add a new sidebar item with a new icon that represents something about chemistry. I don't know. I'm so sorry, but it's the icon we use for home. And we are going to import it from Material UI. Really need to do something about copying plus icons. All right, refresh. Yay, now we're on catalog and home takes us to home and catalog takes us to catalog. Brilliant. Last step from me, and then I'll invite Emma to speak about homepage components. But in the blog post, we published a homepage template that you can see in the storybook that we have for Backstage. For those who haven't seen a storybook, this is a place where you can find all the useful component and the sample code and see what they look like before you create new components to avoid duplication. And there's this section about home, and there's this templates thing, and there's this default template, which is what we're going to get. This is going to be tricky, so I expect lots of errors, but I'm going to just copy over some code and quickly get to this homepage. So I have the Backstage repository open in my VS Code. And I'm going to navigate to the home plugin, which is where I know the template lives. This is the file. And we're still debating if this should be like an out of the box component, which you can just directly plug. But for now, I'm going to copy this whole stories thing. Let me do this. Just move over some files. So I need this logo component, home. This as well, probably not. love live demos. This is this. Yeah, I need that. I was thinking if it's the story file. Right, I have both, and then all of this code inside my homepage. So replace, it's done. Of course, copying things, works right out of the box, but that's not the case. So since it's an example, it directly imports these components from the source code. But since we are in a new Backstage app, we're going to have to import it from the plugin itself. This homepage start entities, which I'm going to show you later, is still not available in the release, which is scheduled for tomorrow. So, but you'll be able to use it, and Emma can talk more about more homepage components that we are creating. So I removed some useless things, which I don't need because it's part of the storybook.
Himanshu, you're changing the root TSX file, not the homepage file.
Oh, wow. Thanks so much. I was going to go into a big trouble here. Thanks, Emma. Undo. Yes, I need this thing inside homepage file. Yes, that makes sense. Replace welcome to Backstage with this new shiny thing. Thanks again, Emma. Backstage plugin home, replace what I don't need, remove what doesn't exist, and clear up all the storage API things. Cool. And then lastly, the start entities, which doesn't exist now, I'm going to comment it out. Awesome. And this is exported as default template. I can say this is my homepage. And the root file, I'm going to do the thing again, which I did previously, point home to home. All right. Apologies if this is confusing. Better tutorial, better demo video coming soon. But now I have replaced my homepage with this template, and let's see if this works. It doesn't, probably because I haven't imported it. Is it due to the file case? It was. Cases matter. Yay! So now we have the default Backstage homepage template available. And if I search for, let's say, playback, you go to search page, find out a bunch of components, view them, but the home looks like home. And now I'm going to pass to Emma, who will be talking about homepage components, basically, and what more components are coming, how can you create one, etc., etc. And I'll stop sharing.
Yes, hey everyone, my name is Emma. I don't have much more to cover. I think you covered everything, Himanshu, which is awesome. Thanks for giving a demo on this. But I could just give some context because it's also covered in the blog post. But what we have been seeing, of course, is that all organizations looks different and your homepage is different from our homepage at Spotify. But this first template is highly based off on our internal homepage at Spotify. So when we created our internal homepage, we did research around what do people want to see, and the search bar, for example, was a one thing that came up in the research a lot of times. So we decided to have this search bar where we take up a lot of space, and then start entities was another thing that people really wanted to see, which you can see in the template as well now. Which is just a list, I think, just give you a list of start entities that you have start. And the reason why we wanted to, as I said, make this templates is that you should be able to compose your homepage as it solves your needs at your organization. So that's why we have created just the template in Storybook, where you can copy and paste. Hopefully we can make this experience a little bit smoother, so that you don't need to copy paste the whole story, because you just need the actual component of it. But then in addition to that, we also created this collection of components, the homepage components, which we hope see grow more and more. So now the recent addition was the start entities. There will come one hopefully during the weekend or so, which is a homepage component that will list Stack Overflow questions. So either from the external Stack Overflow API, or if you have an internal instance of Stack Overflow running. But you can see this coming. I'm working on a Stack Overflow plugin, which will collect the homepage component and some other search related Stack Overflow stuff as well. And yeah, then we're just hoping to see more and more components get added. And a component can really just be a React component, but we have also created this extension creator, which is just makes it a little bit more like make the components a little bit more consistent on the homepage. So you have this like create card extension, component extension, which makes the component look like cards. So you pass in a title and you pass in a component, but the component is really just the content being rendered. And then you have like a card-based component being there for you. And so, yeah, you will see some components live in the home plugin itself, but you will also see homepage components that live in other plugins. So for example, this new Stack Overflow plugin that I just mentioned, it will have a homepage component available from that plugin. So it depends a little bit on how much it makes sense for a component to live together with the plugin or in the home plugin, if it's more a generic one. So yeah, just a little bit of an update there, but hopefully we can see more components being contributed, and templates too. I can add one more thing about that. We have created this default template now, which is, as I said, based on our internal one. Kat have been designing 2 additional designs. I think it's 2. One more metric-based template and one more like section-based template. So you can probably see more templates coming soon as well. And if you want to contribute templates, that's possible. So go to if you want to go to the tutorial that Himanshu just showed you on backstage.io, you can go there. You see how to contribute. If you want to go to the blog post and read more, you see how to contribute there too. So yeah.
Thanks, Emma. And back to Suzanne. Suzanne, sorry, your voice is still, yeah.
Thank you. So thank you so much. That never happens. Oh, there. We will cut this out before we upload it to YouTube. So it doesn't matter, right? Okay. So thank you so much both for sharing more about this. The documentation link is in the chat. I think Tim just posted it. And here's the blog post link in the chat as well, if you want to learn more about that. And please, please, please do show off your best, greatest plugins for this homepage when you have them. I already also saw a screenshot of a Google Calendar plugin, which looks very, very neat. I can imagine that being really useful for a lot of us. So yeah, let's hope that Alex can open source that. Good. Okay, we have another demo coming up, and for that we have Fredrik, and it's about catalog entity insights. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, but if you ever wonder where does this come from, there's a solution for that, right, Fredrik?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. So it's a bit of a short one. The background for this is that the catalog is a pretty powerful service but it also has a bit of complexity to it. Inevitably, it does a lot of things. And one piece of feedback that we get is that sometimes it's not easy to understand why something is not, being ingested properly, or finding links between things. For example, one thing that some people have noticed is these locations, the generated ones. This is sort of a little bit of a topic of its own. We might want to hide those and so on, but this is not what this discussion is about. It's rather about knowing what locations actually matter to me and my components. So to aid people in debugging and understanding what's going on inside the catalog, I made a little helper dialog. It went a little bit under the radar in the previous release, but it's actually been out there for a little while now. So when you're in your entity, it shows, the sort of non-technical version of the information. This is supposed to be useful for your end users, but it's not super detailed in the lower level of what goes on inside the catalog and what's in your entity data and so on. So for the technical users, or for those who want to help someone debug and so on, it's useful to go to the 3 dots menu in the top right, where there now is an inspect entity dialog. So this is designed by engineers and looks accordingly not very pretty, but what it tries to do is to give you all the information that's available from the catalog directly up front, with as little noise as possible around it. For example, it dumps raw annotations, like the location that you came from, in this case, users, blah, blah, and so on. If this is a HTTP link, it's clickable. You get the UID, for example, which is the internal ID for the thing, which is what you need if you want to delete the thing. It's the actual ID used for deletions and so on. So getting at this kind of low level info is much easier here than having to look in the network inspector and similar. Raw relations by their type and target, directly dumped down here. You can see the entire ancestry of your entity. This one happens to come from a location entity, which in turn comes from a generated location, right? Which is this one. So this can be useful to go dig up the tree of things to find out where something went wrong. You can find things that are co-located with your entity, and by that I mean they are stored in the same place. This one shows us now that all of these things are actually in the same origin, which is the old components.yaml file. So this is useful to know, for example, if I make a change to this entity, what is the sort of splash damage? Where can I find related things that might be owned by other people near me? If I try to unregister this location, what are the things that will actually be removed and destroyed, to understand the context of everything. There's also raw JSON or raw YAML for those who want to really, really dig down. Again, so you don't have to check in the network inspector for this type of info. This is really like early days. I just put in whatever we happen to have at hand. So there's lots of stuff that can be done here. And if you have ideas or contributions, they're very welcome. For example, it would probably be excellent here to be able to see the entity before processing and after processing, to see essentially what we read raw from the original source, and contrast that with the post-processing results. You can see, okay, the catalog apparently added these different fields, and this seems off, for example. And for the ancestry, it would probably be very useful if you start from, for example, this one instead, to see the things that are beneath it as well. What did it generate as you process this location and so on? Yeah, so this is just a quick demo. Hopefully you will find it helpful. It's intentionally not pretty and very technical. And the idea is, of course, that you should only have to use this in dire circumstances, right? It would be really unfortunate if your end users reach for this tool. That would probably indicate that, okay, we could do a better job of surfacing something on the non-technical page in a more presentationally, user-friendly manner. But for those rare circumstances where it's needed, I hope that this will turn out useful for you. And that's it for me.
Great work. yeah, this will answer the question, why? You can at least click the dots and dot menu and then inspect your elements. That's really cool. Okay, so if you have any questions, we can go over that later. Talking about questions, that is the next thing on the agenda. And it was a question asked by James Russo. I don't know if you want to ask it yourself, James, or you want me to try to translate your question.
Sure, I can ask it directly. Basically, I was curious for any teams that were able to move from an existing knowledge base or search solution. So I guess for context for us, we use Confluence internally, have for a few years now. And whenever the conversation around tech docs comes up, although we see a lot of value in it, on our team, it's hard to sell it to our organization to move all of our knowledge base to something new, or for us to maintain like a search solution, as opposed to using like a third-party provider of search. So I'm curious if anyone has been successful trying to sell either of those to their organizations, and if so, how did you go about it?
Maybe I could start, James. Gary Neiman here. I'm product manager, one of the Backstage product managers, and we specialize in our team on discoverability and technical documentation. So this is kind of what we're doing. And yeah, regarding search first, yeah, we didn't move from something to Backstage search. So we haven't made that shift. And I would say yeah, we've done a lot in Backstage search for our search experience for things that belong in Backstage, but we acknowledge, and we haven't solved yet at Spotify, I would say, wider search experiences. Like, for example, if you're searching for code or searching for Google Docs, relevant ones and things like that. So that's not in Backstage search at the moment, and we haven't solved for that yet. So just wanted to share that we didn't move, and we've solved Backstage search type things quite well. It's okay, but there's still challenges that remain, and we acknowledge that. For technical documentation, that's a better story, I would say. We had, like many companies, we had a situation years ago where we had documentation in many places, Google Docs and Confluence and README files and websites and things like that. And I think that that there was a general frustration in the company about that searching for, like looking for documentation, and you didn't know where to look, and if you did find something, you didn't know whether it was up to date or not. So there was frustration in the company, I would say, about that. And also, I think we were quite lucky. There was a general consensus in engineering that they wanted a docs-like code approach. So when we came with Tech Docs, we got very good adoption very quickly, a very good buy-in, and we sold it as the one way of doing technical documentation at Spotify. So we really went for it and said, this is the way, this is how we do it now. We were quite opinionated, and we got away with that. It seemed we'd kind of, it was the right time and the right place, and it worked. And we try to stick to that policy. But of course, there are use cases that we've spotted over time where engineering teams want to do certain things, and Tech Docs is quite simple, you know, docs-like code approach. It's quite a simple web experience, and so there are limitations, and we have come across that as well. And but we've stuck to our guns really about keeping it fiercely optimized for engineers, as we say, and keeping it simple. So tech docs has been a good story. Search is more of a challenging story, I would say. That's Spotify's experience, but I know you'd like some input from other adopters, if there are any to talk about.
So maybe Adam or Ellen wants to add something to this, or anybody else? No, it's a stressful topic many times, with a lot of different people having different tools and different requirements.
One thing I was wondering is whether anybody has added a Confluence collator to the Backstage search, and how that works also.
I know Emma has a story to tell on this.
I don't have a story, but I do. There is a contributor. Was it you, James, or was it your team that were planning to, or someone else that I discussed on Discord around this?
Yes, it was our team.
It was you.
We started work, and another engineer who might be on this call was working on it. We started work on it and had a proof of concept out, but ultimately deprioritized the project for not implementing search in Backstage. But we did collate documents and made them searchable, and were able to test it out. It was, I don't believe, a lot of work, but just something we ultimately didn't get buy-in to implement fully or move other documentation into there.
Cool. So thank you so much for that. If anybody has thoughts and doesn't want to jump on the call, then leave it in the chat or comment on the issue. We'll be open for another week, so feel free. The next question is from Phil. I don't know if Phil is here, maybe to.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Sure. Thanks, Suzanne. Hello, everyone. So for my question, for some context, we're starting to think about growing our team supporting Backstage as we grow our adoption and our company. One thing I want to get some advice or feedback from either the Spotify team or other adopters here is, what do your teams look like in terms of staffing engineers to support your actual internal instance? How many people are on your team? How do you decide who to prioritize? Because one of the big things is we're still trying to sell our upper management on the potential of Backstage, and one thing we want to make sure we do right is like requesting the correct number of headcounts in order to grow our team. So we want to know how people are prioritizing growing their team in order to make it sustainable as their Backstage instance is scaling for more people in the organization. So any feedback from anyone would be really appreciated here.
So I can probably jump in and give a hint as to what's happening at Spotify and how we do it from our side. I'm also super interested to hear how others are doing it, because I think our journey is slightly different. We've been living with Backstage for obviously quite a few years now. So we have a slightly different set of challenges we're trying to solve for at the minute, aligning what we have internally with the open source compared to just brand new adoption. But I can give a hint to kind of, let's say, back 3 years when I started with Backstage and what it looked like then and that kind of journey, and then what we have now. So all the way through Backstage, we've actually kept the teams relatively small. So when I first started almost 3 years ago, we had effectively 2 teams working around Backstage centrally, if you will. Both, I think it was 4 people and either 5 or 6 at the time, primarily engineering mixed with some kind of documentation expertise and that sort of stuff. The 2 teams were split between effectively looking after Backstage Core, as we called it at the time, which is kind of like the core platform, if you will. So not owning the plugins. Again, the beauty about Backstage being the ownership model. So you have all of these kind of engaged plugin owners that take care of their stuff, managed through code owners. But we own the core platform, the adoption of that platform, if you will, the advocation of the platform, and building out the features side of things. That model hasn't really changed. It's just we've grown in the things that we're trying to do now at Spotify. So we fast forward 3 years to now. Right now we have 5 teams around central Backstage when I'm thinking engineering. But we also have really big investments in kind of developer relations, in marketing, in design, and all of these other aspects. A big part for us, like running the projects. So one of the things that made Backstage super successful was obviously at Spotify was the ownership model. But the other thing, I think the secret sauce was kind of the design of it all. Bringing everything into one place is one thing, but then trying to make it feel coherent and easy to use and navigate through is super important. So we've always really engaged with designers and researchers and that sort of stuff to make sure what we're doing is fitting what people need across the organization. So that's been a big piece. And then the second, just like we are in right now, internally, previously, we've had community sessions and we're just about to bring them back. Investing in that community and communicating with them regularly, seeing what's going on, sharing the back and forth between what they're doing, what they're building, what we're building, and how we're supporting them has been super important. So investments in, I think, from across the board, be you engineer, engineering manager, designer, anybody working in the project, being that kind of communicative across to the plugin owners has been super helpful for us. Practically, right now, we have, of course, the maintainers at the moment are all based in Spotify, so we have the one team there focused on the open source and that sort of things. Just like everybody else, we have one team that kind of owns the core, for want of a better phrase, I need a better word, of Backstage for Spotify. Their goal to build the best version of Backstage for Spotify that they can, and as they build that, to open source it, to push it back out through into the open source. We have a team dedicated to discoverability. So Gary, who you've just heard from, Emma, all of their team focused on tech docs, on search, on wider discoverability, what that means on the homepage. Again, all of these teams are kind of 5 or 6 strength. And then we have some new teams spilling up around the software catalog as its own kind of thing. So we think we can invest heavily there to make it better for internal Spotify. And there are more kind of set up like that wider in the Spotify ecosystem. When it comes to growing, I would always say I'm a big advocate of solve the problems in steps. So launch your Backstage solving, what's the biggest, pick a pain point that your organization have and solve that really, really well. You'll end up, that team will have to go out and kind of white glove experience, helping other teams on board with it, use it, help them to see the value. And then as you do that, you'll see more engagement in the wider community within your organization. Based on that, that's where you should start thinking about, okay, what's the next pain point? Can we do that together? Do we need to grow? My experience is typically that 5 to 6 number around the core that support it, maintain it, work with the internal ecosystem. followed by then if there are new kind of experiences you want to build. If you want to really focus in on software templates and grow the communication, if you want to focus in on education is really big at Spotify. So every new engineer that comes through the door, they join what we call an engineering bootcamp, and Backstage is a big part of that, of them getting things done and using the tooling, getting used to it. Start to pick off the things that you think are the most valuable for your organization as you go through, and grow based on that. I'm going to stop waffling, but loosely, that's where we are right now. I'm happy to answer any more questions. I'm super keen to hear what others are doing with it as kind of new adopters to Backstage too. But I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, so at risk of just helping you kind of confirm your own bias there a little bit, that's kind of how I'm looking at trying to push and grow it here within, with my company, right? I have a team that is going to be set up, assuming all of our POCs and things like that go well in kind of that core type setup, but I expect that we'll end up needing an enablement and evangelizing team, right? That goes out and helps the people that own the various application patterns or things that they want to make available and discoverable. I don't want to own all of that, right? That's the idea for building the platform. So I have that kind of a platform and an enablement team, kind of in lockstep. Where we butt off at that point in time is a very interesting question, because I've got a very deep and wide ocean to boil here. And so I want to, I'm looking for willing dance partners within the org right now to start, pulling in their parts first until we hit that critical mass of, oh yeah, that's the place to go, versus depends on how you count, 15 different portals that we've built up over the years for individual things. And you have to know somebody like me that knows who knows where everything's at, right? So yeah, but sounds like we're on the right track, which is good.
Yeah, I can also talk about, I guess, how we've grown. So we started using Backstage, or the team that spun up that owned Backstage was at the beginning of 2021, and we were originally 3 engineers. So the 3 of us worked on and initially proof of concept and deployed Backstage, and we were pretty much the only developers on it for the first 6 months. But our team also owned a CLI component for local development. So we own kind of Backstage and this CLI. So it's not just Backstage. Over the last 6 months, we've grown to about 6 developers, I believe now. And we own pretty much everything. So the core experience, updating Backstage, keeping it up to date, working with other teams in our infrastructure and platform orgs to build their tooling into Backstage. We'd like it to be a lot more organic, but now we've had to do a lot of helping to get other people to build into Backstage, and mostly building the UI components and actually integrating it. We also do the education. So our team works with different teams across the org, does presentations and onboarding sessions to get people onto Backstage. It's definitely, I would say, a lot for one team of 6 engineers to be doing all that and also owning another product. We don't necessarily have an answer for how we plan on growing quite yet. I think it's kind of similar to, I guess, what Backstage has outlined, where we have talked a little bit about having like a core team that works on like Backstage and the core plugin functionality and keeping it up to date, versus other teams that grow off into certain aspects of plugins that we want to build. But yeah, that's kind of where we are right now. And probably by the end of this year, H2, we will potentially start splitting once we get to like 8-ish engineers, but that's how we've been thinking about it.
Yeah, I think Jay's point about budding off is interesting there, because I think, as you alluded to, James, it can be a bit much when you start taking on the entire problem space, right? You don't want to overwhelm your team. So focusing on the platform first, getting traction on the first little thing can be enough to bite off, for start. But then when you get going with the platform, you usually start seeing some of the missing pieces in your org, essentially, right? I mean, maybe you end up with, for example, a situation that we have some lingering needs in modeling, for our catalog, for example. Then it's going to be pretty tough for the team to do, the modeling needs of an entire org up front, right? So that's when it comes in, the need for yeah, communication and inspiration and making sure that those that are most knowledgeable about this modeling and their own needs can sort of shoulder a bit of that burden and get engaged with, you might need some help to do that branching off in effective ways, right? So you don't internalize all the work onto your own little team up front. Because yeah, of course, that can be a bit of work. Not because Backstage itself is a lot of work, but because yeah, infra in an org is a large problem space, essentially.
Yeah, and frankly, that's what turned me on to the whole thing recently is, we've been internalizing all of the work in order to make a lot of these things available for the org, and I'm in the way. So we need to be able to enable folks to make their own stuff available, right? So, yeah, cool.
Cool, and thank you so much all for sharing this. We're almost at time. But yeah, and also happy to see new faces in the call. That's always a good thing. But before we close, there's two things I wanted to share with you. The first one is telling you about the Backstage Conference, which will be organized at the 3rd of March by Roadie and Frontside. I hope somebody will paste the link in the chat, otherwise I will do it when I stop talking. And the other one is that we want to remind you that we have this public adopters list in our repository, and you can add your name there. And if you add that because you are so happy with Backstage, you also really help our project to gain more momentum. Please, let us know if we can help you get past any internal hurdles to add your company to this list. It's a list that many people pay attention to, and it can have a big impact on companies who want to adopt Backstage, but also on the project in general. We always celebrate every new adopter, like, hey, yay, and share that on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, it's greatly appreciated, and that was one of the things I wanted to share before we leave. And lastly, if you want to share anything you're working on, or maybe a new plugin which you released, or you want to share something about organizational challenges or adopting challenges you solved, please let us know. You can always add it to the issue, and otherwise always share it with me or Himanshu on Discord, or just somewhere. Just throw it out somewhere. We will find your message, because one of the fun things is that over the past year we have shared many stories, and a lot of people left inspired. So yeah, you can help us all by sharing your knowledge, your questions, your struggles, especially the struggles. Those are the best stories, I think. But yeah, that's an opinion, probably. Thank you all for joining this community session. We will be here next month again. Next week is the contributor session. So if you have anything for there, you can also add it to the same issue as for this community session, to make it easy.